how much you gain from obviously getting the tack done whilst you're going fast at that time versus if you're to extend and then go into attack later on.
So the faster you go into attack, the less you lose. And like going into that attack straight away at the bottom mark, you take so much speed from the downwind that you can cut the losses by half.
Right.
All right, well, Chris, let's get you now while they're still working up the course and they've still got, a couple of thousand meters, well, 2,200 meters to go to the top mark with Luna Rossa leading. You have said a lot in both legs how the wind is shifting and someone's got the favoured right side or whatever. Remember, we've got a lot of listeners, not only around the world on iHeartRadio, but across New Zealand who are not quite sure what Chris Steele's talking about with getting the favoured or getting a shift and so on. In plain English 101, share it with us.
Yeah, so basically the wind doesn't travel in straight lines, it kind of bends around objects, and that's why when it comes from directly out at sea it's a lot more stable, and that's pretty much the wind direction that we've had in the last probably 10 races of not just the Prada Cup but also the first couple of races of the America's Cup. So that breeze is what we call a lot more stable, it doesn't shift in direction as much, which means that there's not so many opportunities to pass. These boats can't sail directly into the wind, they can't go straight from the bottom of the course all the way to the top. They have to sail these wide angles sailing upwind, and so basically you head out to one side of the race course and then you get to a boundary or the wind shifts and you decide you want to tack and you go back the other way. So you're kind of zigzagging your way up the course, and especially when the boats are on opposite sort of tacks or jibes sailing around the course, those zigzag lines can either get wider or narrower depending on whether you're on the right side of the breeze or the wrong side of it. So these guys have tacticians, or some of the guys like on Team New Zealand, you've got Peter Burling kind of doing most of it on his own, I think. They're constantly looking at what the numbers are telling them with the wind directions and the wind speeds, and they're trying to use those wind directions to sail the least amount of distance that they can from one side of the course to the other. And if you get that right, it means you're in phase with the way the wind is shifting, and it might save you one manoeuvre, or you might just sail less distance, but either way it's going to be a gain. So often you'll see the boat behind try and split away from the boat in front, create a little bit of leverage, and with leverage, you have some opportunity.
1,200 metres to go for Luna Rossa to complete leg number 3 of 6. Well, Dan Morris, that was a pretty good explanation from Chris Steele, wasn't it, in terms of to non-sailors explaining how they get, and going downhill. The other point for Chris is if all of a sudden the breeze shifts around and comes more on the side, the boats can aim straight to the bottom mark a bit more easily to the bottom mark.
That's right, a big shift, especially on the run, that can point you straight to the bottom gates, and all of a sudden you're doing 40 knots, but now you're doing 40 knots straight at the bottom, so that's all VMG, like the number you see on the screen.
Yeah.
Where, if you're lifted, if you're not on the right side of the ship, then you might be going 45 knots, but your speed to the mark is only 20.
And that was the point you're going through that last gate where you highlighted, well, that extra manoeuvre Team New Zealand did cost them. And being able to lay through to the mark, by non-sailors laying doesn't mean going down into bed and having sleep. It means you can just go straight through on the heading you've got, is what Chris was explaining.
That's right. And, Chris was talking about leverage, getting leverage on one side of the breeze or the other. That is, it's limited with the boundaries that we have in these races, so you're forced to do a few extra tacks. And, it's not as simple as just picking one side, going fast to that edge, tacking and laying through. Like PJ said, you have to attack a few times.
Right, coming up to 300 metres to go to complete leg number 3 of 6, and Luna Rossa has an advantage of 300 metres over Emirates Team New Zealand. We're coming to halfway through this first race on race day 2, or this is actually race 3 of America's Cup 36, and Luna Rossa has looked impressive right from the start, and boy, their tacking ability is good. We'll have Dan and Chris talk about that later. Not only what they're doing going through the tacks, they're excellent. Right, we're coming through gate number 3 now. This completes leg number 3 of 6, and it is Luna Rossa leading, and they're leading by a couple of 100 metres, as now Luna Rossa's round the top mark, going on the downhill slide into leg number 4, and the clock is still ticking against Emirates Team New Zealand. And boy, oh boy, we'll get a summary of what they've seen in the first half of the race. And coming through here now, it's Emirates Team New Zealand still ticking away at 22, 23, 24. Remember, they trail by 13 seconds at gate 2. Now here at gate 3, they trail by 27 seconds. Right, first to summarise what he's seen in the first half of the race, here's Chris Steele.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost a case of the rich getting richer at the moment. There was another gain to the Italians, but it's hard to draw too many conclusions with what that might be. For sure, you can see the Kiwis have been doing extra manoeuvres on both legs of the course, and that adds for sure up to some of that distance. Until we see the statistics after the race of who sailed more distance, who sailed faster, that kind of thing, then it's hard to know exactly which boat's going faster, but particularly in this breeze direction, you would expect the boat that wins the start to generally, unless they make a mistake, extend around the racetrack, and that's what we're seeing at the moment. The Italians doing a near flawless job at the moment. Doesn't look like they're going to make any mistakes anytime soon, but in these conditions, I mean, Dan, you'll be able to sort of relate to this. A 350 or 400 metre lead in these conditions is not that much, because if you come off the foil once, that'll disappear very fast.
Well, that's right. Coming off the foil is a quick way to make a gain or a loss, but also the shift is huge. You saw them, Luna Rossa put 100 meters on New Zealand by being in the right shift, and or the left shift at that time. But you can see that go back the other direction as soon as the breeze shifts the other way. If you find one boat on the right side of it, they can make a 100-meter gain back like that in just a matter of 10 seconds.
All right, Dan, we've got a couple of people across New Zealand are wondering, what is the American voice telling us about a left shift and making 100 metres? Meaning you're on the side, the wind shifted around, and they were able to just get closer to the mark they were heading to.
Yeah, so, going into the top marks, the breeze is a little bit further to the left. So once you're going downwind, if you're on starboard tack, you're pointing straight at the bottom nearly. But that shift doesn't last forever. Like Chris said, the wind bends back and forth. So once that wind goes back to the right, now you're going across the course. So even though you're going 40 knots at 35 knots, you're only making 25 to go to the bottom mark.
All right, well, a 300-metre advantage to Luna Rossa at 1,000 metres to go through gate number 4 to complete leg number 4 of 6. And Luna Rossa looks excellent. Coming back, I know some people heard that sailor's phrase, the rich getting richer. Chris, you've got time to expand a little bit more on that.
Yeah, well, it just sort of means the classic cliche of, when the chips are falling in your favour, everything sort of seems to snowball and build momentum off it. And so, particularly in this wind direction, the boat that's in front gets first pick of the breeze that they decide to sort of chase. And they get the wind shifts first as well, so they get to react to that before it actually funnels back to the boat behind. So as long as they don't make any mistakes, if they keep making the right decision, then they just keep getting further ahead basically, which is again coming back to why the starts are so important, because if you can get control of the race early on, well then it's almost yours to lose unless the boat behind is significantly faster. And there's a lot of talk about the performance difference between the two boats and how one boat might have been particularly faster, but we haven't seen that yet. So this is very much a sailor's race, which is, for these guys who have worked so hard, that's what you want. You want to come to the final showdown, and you want to be able to win or lose the America's Cup based on your sailing performance.
Yeah, it's about the jockeys on the boat and where they put the boat in the right place during the start sequence. As Luna Rossa's gone through gate 4, Emirates Team New Zealand coming down, and the clock ticking against Emirates Team New Zealand at 15, 16, 17, 18, 20, 21, 22. Remember, the last marker was 27, so there's a gain of 5 seconds to 22. Emirates Team New Zealand. So now they're back on the wind again, going back uphill in leg 5 of 6. And currently, Luna Rossa has an advantage of, help me here, Chris, I can't work. There's so many graphics in front of us with here we are, a lead of 230 metres. Wow.
Yeah, the Italians doing a nice job now of starting to shut the race course down. As Dan alluded to earlier in the broadcast, when you're in front and the breeze is stable like this, sometimes it's okay to spend a little bit of your lead, do an extra manoeuvre just to make sure that you put yourself in the same piece of water as your opponent. We talked about leverage and how important it is to try and create separation when you're behind. That's all well and good, but if the boat in front doesn't let you get that separation, well then your opportunities are very slim. And so this starts getting to a point in the race where if you're the boat behind, you're really relying on on the boat in front to make a mistake in one of their manoeuvres. Otherwise, if you don't have any separation, then you're not going to be able to peak back to the delta that they're currently seeing at the moment.
Right, I've just had a text from Waihao Bay in the eastern Bay of Plenty from Tahuro, Waihao Tiki's uncle, and he's asked, we under a bit of pressure, Peter, or we giving Luna a bit of a thrill? You can answer that, Chris, and then you can answer it, Dan Morris. Well, here comes the answer, Tahuro.
Well, I'd say, I mean, Dan will be able to, go into more detail on it, but I'd say with the margins and how quickly the pendulum can swing in this sport, and particularly in these boats, you certainly don't want to be giving any freebies away, because, I mean, we've seen throughout the duration of this, not just the America's Cup, but the Prada Cup series, and even before that, the Christmas Cup. I mean, one team will be going very fast over the space of a week or two, and then very quickly, next time you see the two boats, it's completely different. So, I mean, they're both going to improve every day that they go sailing. It's a matter of trying to notch up the winds when you're fast and not make any mistakes. And I think at the moment, the Italians are managing to do that.
Well, Dan Morris, this really is Taika Waititi's uncle who texted me with that. I don't think Team New Zealand's trying to give them a bit of a thrill. What do you think?
Well, maybe they're just trying to make it a good event and have as many ratings as possible for the media to work off of, but no, I wouldn't think that.
Here we are, well into leg number 5 of 6, and we've got 1,500 metres to go to gate number 5. Dan Morris, trimmer off for American Magic. Tell us what you're seeing right in front of you and what you're thinking right now.
Well, I see both boats going very fast. They're sailing the boats well, and you're not going to see any passing happening just by going faster than the other boat and sailing straight through them. You're going to have to be on the right side of the wind shifts, like Chris has been talking about this whole broadcast, and you're going to have to get a clean start. And that boat that's in the lead has a lot of control. And we know that sailing upwind, the boat that's in the lead gets the breeze first, but also when you're going downwind, the boats are going 3 to 4 times faster than the wind speed. So the boat that's in the lead is also going to get the wind first because they're catching the new wind.
Yeah. So also the other point is you could be sailing into a building breeze, and/or as you head out of the boat you can see which side the breeze. It's not like a vacuum cleaner in reverse with the wind coming down, as Chris said earlier. The breeze is moving and oscillating, and that's part of the challenge for sailors to try and harness the breeze as it's moving around the compass.
That's right. That's right. It's you have that vision, and then when you're in the lead, you can afford to to go one way or the other and give up a bit of your lead to leverage it for a gain later, or just leverage it to stay in control.
Well, it's a question whether or not it was in race 2 and now race 3. You do wonder whether Team New Zealand's got a bit of nerves in them, because both of you said Team New Zealand looks a quick boat, but it all comes back to the start and the jockeys, and when they put this upcoming race, if we do have race 4 this afternoon, the pressure on the start sequence, Chris Steele.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of pressure starting to build. There's been a lot of talk about that being an area of strength for Jimmy Spittle and Francesco Bruni, who have had more decorated sort of match racing experience, I guess, than Burling and a lot of the New Zealand team. But, I've sort of said for a long time now, I think Burling doesn't give himself enough credit for, or particularly other people don't give Burling enough credit for how quickly he can adapt to different scenarios. And we saw that in Bermuda. He was a bit shaky in the starts early on in the Challenger Series, but by the end of it, he cleaned Jimmy Spittle up in the actual match itself, and a huge part of the pre-start. So, I mean, it's a hard one at the moment. It's upwind start, so it's a little bit more of an important area, but yeah, they're going to have to change the way they go about their process, because the Italians are doing a number on them at the moment.
Just over 100 metres out from gate number 5 to complete leg number 5 of 6, and Luna Rossa continues to set the pace, and it's a red-hot pace at that. They're sailing beautifully. Their tacks, their manoeuvres, their position on the race course, their race management has been quite outstanding as Luna Rossa goes through gate 5, and they are 6 seconds, 10 seconds and counting against Team New Zealand, who trail by 22 seconds at the last mark. And Luna Rossa just hold their position, and they'll go 2-1 up in America's Cup 36. Still coming up to the mark, and we'll come back to Dan Morris once we get through the mark. But Team New Zealand coming up. Peter Burling reduced to play follow the leader, and boy oh boy, it comes back to a lot of the start. I know what Chris Steele has said. The clock stops at 38 seconds. Let me say that again, ladies and gentlemen. 38. At Mark 4, it was 22. At Mark Gate 3, it was 27. 2, it was 13 and 10. So that was an excellent leg, that leg 5, for Luna Rossa to stretch out. Which really, Dan Morris, comes back to what you and Chris have been sailing during the building breeze, getting on the favoured side, or up to the sailors to work out which is the favoured side to get the favoured ship.
That's right, and by being in the lead, they were able to control the race and tracking the right position with relative to New Zealand, forcing New Zealand to sail their mode, where New Zealand wasn't able to just sail the boat the way they might normally sail. When you're in open water, you can get the best performance out of the boat, but when you're in a tight lane and a tight position with another boat in front of you, that affects the breeze you're going to get, and it affects the mode that you can sail without just reaching the leeward and giving up everything.
That's the voice of Dan Morris, Trevor off of American Magic. What a pleasure to have him with us in our commentary team today. We're coming to you on iHeartRadio across the world and also across New Zealand, as well as News Talk ZB and Gold AM. As now we can see that 2,000 metres to go. Oh, no, wait a minute. Let me start that again. 1,600 metres to go for Luna Rossa, 2,000 metres for Team New Zealand, because Luna Rossa is leading Team New Zealand by 480 metres as they're closing down to the finish to wrap up this race. So let's go on board and listen to the conversation before we hear again from Chris Steele and Dan Morris. That tells you a bit, Dan, that, when they're in a comfortable lead like that and things are going straight forward, just sail the boat as quickly as you can to the bottom and the finish.
Yeah, anytime you don't hear a lot of comms on the boat, you know that they're locked in, they're sailing the boat smoothly, and they're just going to carry it into the finish. And both teams will just be starting to prepare for the next race. That's all you can do.
Well, the wind's up. It's the bait of the pessimism that it could be marginal or no races. It could be a long day. And we're firing blanks. The breeze still up. We'll talk about that. Just let's get these boats home and finish for a start. There is an advantage of over 400 metres to Luna Rossa as they're now coming down to 500 metres only left in this race. For race 3, there's 6 legs. They're on the final leg now. And Luna Rossa has an advantage of over 500 metres now. They're continuing to stretch out as they go through the jibe. Boy, I love the way that Luna Rossa tacks and jibes. They're just so good at what they're doing. And when you think about, we've already spoken to Dan Morris about the weight of these foils and just how the grinders are able to get that pressure and the stored pressure to be able to let the boats do what they want to. Right, coming now inside the final 100 metres and coming down to the finish. Race 3, America's Cup 36. This is on race day 2. And Luna Rossa Pirelli goes across the line and they have won it. So takes the scoreline now to Luna Rossa 2, Emirates Team New Zealand 1. Remember, it's best of 13 or first to 7. What a performance. It goes back to the start. And boy, it really puts the premium on the finish, as now we're 23, 4, 5, and still counting against Emirates Team New Zealand. It's academic, I know, because they've been beaten and well beaten. Coming down to the finish, Emirates Team New Zealand crossed the line at 37 seconds. So they made 1 second up on that leg. They trailed by 38 seconds at gate number 5. And now they come to gate number 6 and the finish, and it is 37 seconds behind. For his immediate thoughts, here's Chris Steele.
Yeah, it was an impressive performance from the Italians there, PJ. I mean, keep banging on about it, but the race was pretty much won and lost in the start, and the Kiwis didn't have a bad start there. They just didn't have control. You know, the Italians were able to get pretty wide off them early on, and the approach back to the line, they created a lot of separation, and then they were able to use that separation to generate some speed just before the start, and they really slingshotted, and using that speed they were able to create a little bit more gauge and hold the Kiwis all the way to the boundary. At that point the Kiwis were actually slightly in front, but they were coming off the boundary and right tucked into a corner, and so it was pretty easy for the Italians to tack in underneath them and put the herd on them on that upwind leg, and from there they just took control, and never let up.
All right, well, just before we go to Dan Morris for a quick summary, before we take a break, what's your hunch? You can see the breeze that's out there at 7-8 knots. It still looks holding, doesn't it? My point is, can we expect another race 4 this afternoon?
Yeah, I mean, everything that I'm seeing right now suggests that the race 2 will go ahead. It sort of looks that way. But, yeah, I mean, from what I can see, it's just going to come down to who wins the start, and from there, unless they make a mistake, it'll be pretty tricky.
Dan Morris.
Yeah, the boats are they're in their biggest sails. They're good for it. They're able to foil on this breeze, so I don't see any reason why they wouldn't get another race in.
All right, that's Dan Morris, trimmer of American Magic. Great to have him in our broadcast team today alongside Chris Steele.